Hi, John.
We're back.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. A couple months.
Yeah,
maybe, something like that.
a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And it's been hunting seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been really hard to book guests.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the one thing that I've found. Like everybody's busy.
Mm-hmm.
Or
I mean,
tour.
we've had some guests literally like, I think I can make it, and we pencil it in, and they're like, I'm not back from my hunting trip yet.
Yeah. Which is good. We encourage it. So, as we go through this journey, we might look to like, hey, you know what? Let's take our like mid-year break in the fall. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then that way it's like.
Or film something out in the field.
That too. Surprises are abound. Mm-hmm. They're coming.
I mean, like that Meat Eater episode when they did they get a pig during that one podcast recording?
Oh, I think they did. I think they
their
did.
Producer.
Yeah, I think she did. I don't remember.
Totally blanking.
But
she almost got one.
That's good. Good TV or good podcast, as they say. But yeah, you were out in the field. You got some hunting done.
Yep,
you
fishing,
were successful.
some hunting,
some fishing.
Yeah. Unsuccessful, successful. Well, actually, technically, my friends were successful.
That's even better.
Andrew and I went up to Big Sur a couple times during deer season.
Oh, yes.
A-zone. And we didn't get anything, but it was my first time backpacking and hunting.
On public land. Yeah.
So it was an incredible experience. And we made a film, so we'll have Andrew on at some point.
Is it done? Is the film done?
Film's done.
Ooh.
We just aren't ready to release it quite yet, but soon.
That's exciting.
Yeah. We actually have a few films in the works. So we got that. We're working on a hunting dog film.
Okay.
With Matthew Jacobs.
Uh-huh.
And Kelsey Gorder actually is going to be in it as well. And some locals that are super deep into their hunting dogs. It's pretty amazing to watch. Dog people are
crazy. Mm-hmm. And I say that as a dog person.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm not near as accomplished as a lot of those folks. Mm-hmm. Matthew and Kelsey included, but that'll be really fun. Mm-hmm. That'll be really fun.
I know someday I'm doing it because I want a hunting dog someday, but I know I'm not ready for one.
Dude,
and so I'm kind of vicariously living through. I mean, I have two dogs. One of them is a Dachshund Beagle mix, and
although she's hound in him.
Well, yeah, that's what's so. The other day, she was out of my in-laws. They have like 20 acres out in Creston, and they were dog sitting for like a week while we were out of town, and she nabbed herself a quail. Actually,
what? How injured was it before she got it?
I don't know that it made it. I don't know. I don't know if it was.
You think she just got it?
I think she just got it somehow. Yeah.
Wow.
But so maybe she is a quail dog.
Who knows?
Yeah. So we got that film. We got the Big Sur film. We're doing a fly fishing film with Dagger.
Yeah. Previous guest. If you haven't watched that episode, go back and watch it. Yeah. It's awesome.
He loves carp.
Yeah. The man loves fishing.
Yes.
People can be addicted to a lot of different things, and his just happens to be.
Oh yeah, he's deep
fly line.
Into it.
Yeah,
deep.
But so we finally got a fly rod in your hands.
Mm-hmm. First time
which
ever.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, I kind of got it down. Feeling pretty good. I mean, obviously it's hard. I hooked my sleeve at one point. Fortunately, it wasn't a new eyebrow piercing that I gave myself.
Yeah.
But we're gonna go back out, film a little bit more of that, and then the thing I'm most excited about is. Where I got that boar out in the Creasel Plains last December. I took some friends out and two of them got a boar. It's actually a father-son. So really cool. We filmed it. I think it's going to be really meaningful too.
Yeah.
Really cool.
That's a rad keepsake for them to have.
Yeah.
Because that's their first pigs ever, right?
First pigs ever. Both of them.
That's super cool.
And I got that skull done from Brant's Molnar.
Shout out.
Yeah. Shout out. He's at Cayucas, so he's out there, and they took one of their skulls out to him too. Yeah. So, if you're looking for someone to do your skull locally, there's a lot of amazing people.
In the Central Coast of California.
Yeah, Central Coast, out in Cayucas, Brant's Molnar. He's the man. He's great. Super nice guy. We should have him on sometime. I think
Cayucas. Cayucas means canoe in Chumash, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
Drew Kaczynski will tell me if I'm wrong because we learned that together.
Nice.
And I think that's what it was. But
I love it.
can't remember.
That's awesome.
I got out a little bit. I got out for dove.
Mm-hmm.
That was really, really fun. I was
your
out
friend's kid.
Yeah, with Matt Allgood and his daughter. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that was like super rewarding to like watch her on her first dove hunt, and she slayed a few birds with her little 410, and you know, we had a really good time and had a dog, Chaps. Chaps was chasing them for us. So back to the dogs. It's really fun to hunt with dogs. And then I got up to B Zone with my buddy Billy, Wild Bill, and we chased bears and deer, and the camp, his family. We got a couple bucks. I didn't see anything that I wanted to take home with me, but super fun. We hunted hard. We hunted hard for 4 or 5 days, and it's really hot still. So I was a little, man, I'm still learning these California seasons after being back. They're super early, and you know, I think it was another 3 to 4 weeks, probably 3 weeks before the deer really hit the rut, and we're really excited. But seeing a lot of people successful, and it's super awesome. So, but glad to be back on the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's awesome to be here again.
We've got
and a little bit of a new setup too. Showing off the sheep's head logo.
Looks
here.
A little different, and we feel more professional. Yeah. So you'll have to give us some feedback.
I mean, we have headphones this time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I actually can't hear anything you're saying. It's just no. We are really excited though. Today we have a guest that has been on our guest list since I think we started the podcast months ago. Drew Wilson, and for those of you unfamiliar with Drew, he is an angler. He's a fly fisherman, but he's also a really accomplished and very funny and very well-known tattoo artist. He's also got his hands in skateboarding. And so all of these things are not unlike you and I.
Exactly.
And I don't know how I've been following Drew for probably.
So you didn't know him in real life?
No,
okay.
He lives back in Northwest Arkansas or thereabouts, pretty close to Fort Smith. We'll get into it with him, but I've got some good friends back there, and I didn't know him, but it feels like we should all hang out. So really excited about this conversation. I think he's got a really cool story, and I'm really fly fishermen don't look like us. Well, they haven't for a really long time. And so it's going to be interesting to talk to someone as accomplished as Drew, and as talented as Drew, and learn a little bit about some of the things that he's done and gone through in his story.
I'm super excited about that. Just the idea of, we've talked about it many times, like the shop feeling like what a skate shop felt like to us when we were kids. And you wanting to make it feel like that, so there could be like a sense of community. It could be welcoming. It could be a little bit nostalgic, and cater to those of us that, I mean, even though we're in our 40s, still feel like we're a different generation of hunter. And I think that we are, in some ways, from what I've seen, a little bit of a start to that new generation where it's shifting a little bit. Like the old guard is kind of, passing a baton, and we're seeing this sort of like intersection of hunting, fishing, and culture happening a little bit differently. And I think skate culture, tattoo culture, and you see it through a lot of the brands that you carry, like Howler Brothers, and you can kind of see those things merging.
Music's a big one too.
It's all kind of coming together. It's really cool.
It's interesting, and I think I'd love to get somebody much smarter than I am on here to talk about like the intersection of like culture and social economic like things, and like how we when we get older we end up in this like living in this world of the outdoors. So
I mean, REI is cool, but I think what's cooler is a shop like this, and I think it represents like REI was sort of the younger version of the outdoor shop, but I think that's even shifting. I mean, we hear, people call Patagonia Patagucci now, and people are out there wearing it who might not really even set foot on a trail ever. And not to knock that, I have some Patagonia. I like their stuff, but like, I think we're seeing it shift a little bit. And I think this guest definitely represents that new era.
It will be a spirited conversation. I think you guys will enjoy it a lot. So
definitely
stick around, enjoy the new setup, and enjoy Drew.
Yeah.
Dude, first and foremost, thank you for jumping on this with us.
Yeah,
like, we're just getting rolling, and we've had some Brad guests, but you've been on the list the whole time.
Good.
So
I'm glad, man. I'm honored.
yeah.
I'm pouring this drink, and this bottle's about empty. I'm sorry.
No, it's
Nice.
All right, there we go.
Yeah, Tim shared some of your stuff with me, and I got super pumped. I actually what I'm looking at right now is my laptop, and on the back of that is your little fish cowboy sticker.
Oh, snap.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool.
I love that one. It's so dope.
Where are you guys from? Where y'all at?
So we're right in the middle of California, between Los Angeles and San Francisco, and
Like on the coast?
Yeah, San Luis Obispo. If maybe you've heard of that.
Yeah. I just had a client from there.
Oh, cool.
Really?
Yeah, recently, like maybe in the last month, I had someone come get tattooed from there.
Huh.
I'm trying to think of who it was. My brain's slipping on it.
Was it Chris?
But if there's someone who just got tattooed by me from there, then that
I want to say, yeah. Well, it's yeah. I have a buddy Chris that shops in here that has your Catching Kitties hat. And I was like, I wonder if Chris went back there. But
I don't know. I don't know if it was him. It was someone who came from there. And I want to say it was here to Arkansas, but I might have tattooed him while I was on the road.
Yeah.
But I know someone from there recently.
That's awesome.
You're like an hour from the Hearst Castle area. Correct?
Yeah.
You're like an hour. Yeah. Then it's totally that person.
John lives like 10 minutes from Hearst Castle.
Yeah. I'm like right on the coast, right? Just south of
I've been there, but I don't know the fishing in the area, but I've been there.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to have you back, man, when you're in the area. We'll go. It's funny, like having a shop here and having fly fishing equipment. I get people every day that you can't fly fish here. You know? And it's just like and that's kind of like become like a theme for a lot of this is like, wait, hunting in California, fishing and fly fishing in in the Central
near
Coast.
the coast.
Yeah. So it's pretty funny.
I've not fished like central coastal California, but I've fished in LA and done the Corbina spawn, and I've fished in North California, and then I fished like the LA River, and then near Yosemite and all that. So I feel like I've seen a lot of it, just not y'all's area.
Yeah. Well, this is like, it's beautiful here, man.
Yeah.
It's like I was in Texas for like 15 years and just came back last year. And if I was going to live in California, this is where I'd want to be for sure.
Yeah. So. Good.
Yeah.
Affordable too.
Yeah. Well, there's like a membership fee to live in California.
Oh yeah, dude. I'm from Russellville, Arkansas. I'm in my tattoo shop right now. My rent for this shop is $600 a month.
Dude, I love it.
Anytime anyone talks to me about like living anywhere else, I'm like, yeah, man, sounds expensive.
I have some very, very good friends in Northwest Arkansas, and there's even talk of Sheep's Head Shop #2 opening in Arkansas, and it's a place near and dear to my heart, man. I love it there. It's a beautiful state for sure.
Yeah.
Well, holler next time you come visit and come fish with me here.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
We'll both come get tattooed and we'll do the works.
But John and I were talking like before we kind of got, as we were getting set up, and like I don't remember, I've probably been following your Instagram and artwork for like 6 or 7 years.
Oh snap.
Yeah,
well, thank you.
No, but it's like been through several like of my accounts and now my professional account, and I don't know. There's so many similarities between, it seems like, you and like culturally growing up and like being involved in skateboarding and being involved in tattoos and being involved. I'm sure there's like some punk rock in there somewhere. Yeah. And that's how John and I are too. And a big theme of this podcast and these conversations have a lot of times been not necessarily access to like water in some cases, but like access to like knowledge, access to understanding, access to resources, and like for you and us to like, be covered in tattoos and grow up skateboarding, how do we end up fly fishing? And
I think there's a really close bridge actually, and I'll talk about it in depth. I'd ask you.
I'd love to.
Did we start? Am I good to go?
Yeah,
into
dude.
it?
Yeah. But no, we're kind of going, and I guess to like help us get to know you, like outside of your artwork.
Okay.
That's
cool.
That's what I would love.
Well, I I grew up a skateboarder, like since age 9, maybe. I got introduced to it through my buddy Justin Clark, he'd moved to where I lived from Alaska. I lived in Sherwood, Arkansas, and we became friends through fishing. Justin and I met in second grade, and we both like to fish, so that's what we did. We ride our bikes to the park every day and fish the little creek. And I think at 9 or 10, he came to my house and he had a skateboard. And we'd been buddies for like a while, like at that point. And he showed up one day with a skateboard and not a fishing rod. And that was my first introduction. And I think I spent like 4 hours straight just trying to stand on a skateboard. And I learned how to do shove-its, like not pop shove-its, just the flat, like standing still, crappy shove-its. The first day I ever stood on one. And after that, I was just enamored with that. And then years later, when I was 18, in Little Rock, Arkansas, there's not like a giant skateboard culture at this time, right. But we'd had a few guys who had moved out to LA and stuff and ended up succeeding in becoming professional skateboarders. And one of them, who was riding for Zero, Judd Ferguson, broke his ankle, moved back to Arkansas. And I was working at a skate shop, and he came into the shop to buy a board. So I met him through skating, and he was my introduction to tattooing. And tattooing is the newest thing I do. I started working in a shop right when I turned 19. I'm 36 now, about to be 37. And it's the newest thing that I've done in my life, which is crazy to me. But I try to bridge everything together. So still skateboarding, still fishing, still tattooing. And that's pretty much it. I'm as consistent as I can be with those things.
I love it. That's so cool. Yeah. I started kind of catching wind of this sort of like the merging of these cultures in a way, like looking at the Crooked Creek Holler stuff and
Danny, he does a great job.
Totally. And looking at your stuff, I was like, man, that's so cool. There's more people out there just doing this kind of stuff and bringing it into the fold. And I think that's something we were talking, like for Tim, like this shop right here, when we first met, I walk in, I'm like, dude, this feels like a skate shop. And he's like, yeah, that's on purpose. Like trying to kind of bring that nostalgia into it, you know?
I love that. Yeah. Danny, Crooked Creek Holler, Danny Reed. He's a good dude. He was like a very reputable and skilled tattooer. And so I knew who he was for years, and I wasn't. I was like still cutting my teeth. I still am cutting my teeth, but way more so then. And I remember the first day Danny caught a fish on a fly rod. We never met or anything like that, but he posted it on Instagram, and I've been fly fishing for years at that point. I was like pretty ate up with it. And I was trying to get the fish and tattoo thing going. And I remember Danny posting his first little trout he caught. It was like some little tiny trout. And this was like my first fish ever on a fly rod. And I knew at that moment, I was like, this is cool, because now this guy who I look up to, who I've been inspired by, is interested in something that I'm interested in. Maybe I'll be friends with him. You know, like who knows?
Maybe I can help
get
him
to know him. Yeah, something like that. Well, I mean, he was already such a good tattooer, and everybody wanted to know him. So the moment that he got into the fishing world, everybody wanted to help him. But he started Crooked Creek Holler maybe 3 weeks later. I feel it was really fast. Right after he got ate up with fly fishing, he started that company, and it really helped push the movement of like what I was trying to do, because I wasn't anywhere near the level he was at. Right. And so it was like trying to get something going, and it was kind of working. And then you have someone who's a heavy hitter come into the scene and just elevate it. And he also set a really high standard for the quality of tattoos that needed to be done in like the outdoors world. And I'm thankful for it. I'm so thankful for it. We ended up being buds. We've like gone and fished in Brazil together. He came and visited me here in Arkansas a couple years ago. And so that all worked out real well. But yeah, I'm so thankful for Danny Reed. It's cool what he's done for this thing that I get to do.
Yeah, it's you know, well, actually, to take a step back, you said like, you know, you had a friend that introduced you to fishing. The same friend introduced you to skateboarding. Were you just using like spinning rods like as a little kid? Like, how did the jump into flies how did that happen?
I had access to like a fly rod with an automatic reel when I was younger.
Okay.
And we would use him to catch bluegill. But it wasn't like that was our thing. We weren't doing like a bunch of fly fish casting, like proper casts. I went to boys camp. My grandparents sent me there when I was in sixth grade, like summer of sixth grade. So my dad's side of the family had like money, and my dad decided that he was going to work at like a Mexican restaurant instead of going to college. And they essentially like kind of cut him off. Right. And so we grew up pretty poor, and not like I had very hardworking parents. But we just grew up kind of poor because they didn't have the head start that everyone else in the family had.
Sure.
And at age, I think 12, however old you are, right after sixth grade, my grandparents, who were like pretty wealthy, would still send any boy in the family to this camp in South Texas near Victoria, Texas. I think it was called Hunt, Texas, called Camp Stewart for boys. So it was like kind of a high-end camp. And I went there, and it was like probably the first poor person to ever go there because it was like an expensive place to be. And that was my introduction to fly fishing originally, because I love to fish, and the only rods they had there were fly rods.
Right.
One of the counselors had a spinning rod, and we totally stole it, like literally stole it and hid it in the woods. Cause I was like a little turd, you know, but, we would go out and fish there, but that's where I learned to like essentially cast a fly rod somewhat. And then years later, once I'd already started tattooing, I was collecting tattoos, and I was also still broke. I was like a young tattooer. So anytime that I was going to be in a new city, I would find the best tattooer and I would go just buy a little tattoo from them. And I'd usually get fishing lures, because fishing lures were like small enough that I might be able to get one for $80 to $100 or something like that, you know? So usually I'd show up and be like, hey, I got $100 so you can do, I just want a fishing lure or whatever you want to do. And I went to this guy in Nashville named Mike Fight, who was known to be a fly fisherman and an angler. And I went to him and I told him I wanted a fishing lure and that he could do whatever he wanted. I had $100. And he was such, can I cuss on this? Is that okay?
Yeah.
It's important to this story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. He was such a fucking prick to me. He was such a turd. He was like the elitist fly fisherman, you know, like just the worst. He just talked down to me the whole time. And I was like, when I told him I wanted a lure, he told me that he didn't spin fish, so he didn't know any lures. And I was like, well, just do a fly on me. He's like, well, you won't even know what kind of fly it is. I'm like, I don't care. You know, like, I just want a tattoo from you. I'm trying to collect your art. But he was such an asshole to me, and he talked down to me the whole time. And afterwards I left, I went to Bass Pro and I bought a White River fly fishing combo.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to do it better than him. Because fuck him, you know, that was my mindset. He had told me about a trip to Mossy Creek in Virginia where he had gone with a buddy of his, and they had spent like 5 days there and they got skunked. And I hadn't ever really been used to getting skunked because I'd just been bass fishing my whole life and knew bass very well.
Yeah.
And so he's telling me about, well, it's really technical fishing and you just have to be really good and you just don't understand because you're not a fly fisherman. And so my goal when I bought that fly rod was to go to Mossy Creek and catch more fish than him, which was one, you know, I needed was one. But I learned to fly fish essentially out of spite. And it's so stupid. But years later, you know, I'm doing the whole fishing and tattooing thing, and I've got this crossover and I'm putting my cultures together. And really, essentially, I owe a lot to Mike Fight for being an asshole to me. Mm-hmm. I was working in Denver at a shop there, and one of the kids who works at the shop had just gotten a tattoo from Mike. So Mike was working in Nashville at the time. And this kid had gone to Nashville, got a big tattoo from him. And I'm working at the shop with him, and he had an appointment with me, he was getting tattooed by me. And I asked him about his fresh tattoo, and he said that Mike Fight did it. And I was kind of being a jerk. I was just like really laid into Mike Fight for being such an asshole to me. And he was one of the worst people I've met in tattooing as far as like just being rude for no reason.
Right.
The next day I wake up, I go back to the shop in Denver. I walk in, everyone in the shop's waiting on me. Like they're all waiting by the door, essentially, to tell me some news and see how I react. And they told me that Mike Fight died the day I was talking a bunch of shit on him at the shop. He he had a heart attack while driving home from the tattoo shop and ran into a tree or a building or something and died.
No shit.
Wow.
And they just wanted to see if I would walk back all the shit I'd talked on him the day before, you know. I wasn't being. I like to think that I'm generally very honest, and so like I might be. I'm not really a loudmouth. I talk a lot, but I'm not a loudmouth. But I was like, yeah, I mean that sucks for his family, but I stand by what he said. He was terrible to me, you know. But I do owe him a lot, you know, because he did introduce me to something, even if it was not the correct way. That essentially he put me on a path that changed my life.
Right.
You know, I was getting a bunch of fishing tattoos. I mean, I was doing some too, but nowhere near what I ended up doing. And I owe a ton of it to him for putting me on that path.
Yeah.
His wife Lisa inherited his shop, and she ordered some art from me a few weeks after he passed away.
Oh, wow.
Because she wanted to put art in the shop that Mike would have loved.
No way.
And it was crazy because he would have probably just talked a bunch of shit on it because I made it. But I wrote her a letter and I put it in with her order to tell her the story. And it was probably an odd thing to read because she just lost her husband and the father of her children. And I was very honest in the story, but I told her that while him and I, like he was abrasive to me, and I mean I would have rather been hugged by sandpaper, you know. He was not kind, but he put me on a path that changed my existence. It changed my family's existence, and hopefully it changes a lot of other people's lives through me. And how much I owed him, and I felt so indebted to him for being such a jerk to me. I know that goes a lot deeper, but that was my introduction to fly fishing. Yeah. It came from tattooing.
That's really beautiful, though, man. That's like, thank you for sharing that.
It's funny to me that I started through spite and ended up here now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I drove.
That's
through
how I know you
Nashville.
grew up skateboarding.
yeah, dude, just piss and vinegar. You know, I grew up. I still skateboard almost every other day, at least. You know, my body doesn't like it as much now as it did then. I'm always getting hurt. I tore my UCL in September last year, so it's been a year of recovery from that, and I lost use of my elbow for a few months and couldn't work, couldn't tattoo, couldn't row my boat, couldn't fish. But I still love it. I'll still do it all the time. You got to pay to play. You know, if you're a skateboarder, you know that.
Oh yeah, I got a metal plate in my right leg, so I've been there. Yep. Yeah, it was like a lame fall too, like a foot high flat bar at a skate park, and just fell wrong and had a tibia plateau fracture.
Dude, you always get hurt when you're doing nothing.
Yeah,
So the worst injuries of my entire like skateboarding existence always come from like pushing up to the obstacle I'm skating and just hitting a crack or just like missing with putting my foot on or something like that. This one, I was skating a Euro gap with one of our local kids who's good, and I try to encourage him. So I'll skate whatever with him because we don't have a lot of good skateboarders in this little town I live in. And I was rolling into a small Euro to skate a larger Euro, and I was trying to do kickflip manuals up it, and I couldn't get my foot in position quick enough because I'm like 15 foot of flat. So I'm rolling into this Euro in kickflip position, and I just slipped out, just rolling into it, not even to the trick yet. I was looking at where I was going, and I slipped out and fell, and it was so dumb. But that's just how you get hurt, you know? I broke my wrist a year before moving my kayak from my truck. I was like going to work in New York, and it was first thing in the morning. So I woke up at like 4 a.m. to go to the airport, and I went to move my boat off the top of my truck. It's maybe 100 pounds. And I just hadn't been out of bed more than 2 minutes and dropped it and caught it weird and just broke my wrist.
Oh my God.
And I would much rather get hurt skateboarding than moving a kayak as far as the story goes. You're going to get hurt though. You know, like it's going to happen. I'm going to knock on wood real quick though, because
all of us should.
Seriously.
Well, it's like that. What do they say? Like most car accidents happen like within a mile of your house.
Yeah. You know? It's when you start feeling comfortable and not paying attention.
Yeah.
If you're a lifelong skateboarder, you know that when you're trying something, you're ready for things to go wrong. Right. So you're ready to slip out, you're ready to roll, you're thinking about your fall. And when you're just pushing and you hit a rock, you're not thinking about it.
Yeah.
And so you're not prepared for any of it. And that's why I think you get so broke off on the littlest things.
So true.
Totally. I was kind of curious about, I mean, kind of speaking about skateboarding and, you know, you kind of coming through this trajectory through what you just talked about, getting into tattooing. And then there's, like I told you, I have one of your stickers on my laptop, like all the like really cool things that you make. How did that take
when did you
shape
know that the fish thing was going to be like,
man,
you're famous for it now, for lack of a better term, man.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a weird term for me still. I just had some kids who came from Atlanta this past few days who said that to me a few times. It's weird for me. Because no matter how many people know who I am, I still get diarrhea from drinking too much. And like, you just can't ever get like a real, like really proud of yourself when you live such a crappy existence. I caught a kind of special fish in, I think, 2015. And I was already doing some fishing tattoos, and Instagram was kind of helping, but Instagram was still kind of getting to where it is now.
Right.
And I was fishing all the time. I was ate up with it. I was always out. All my buddies were fishing, and I was working at a really good tattoo shop in a town, and I was pretty busy. So I was like booked out several months, just doing normal people stuff, like doing angel wing back pieces and American flag sleeves and stuff like that. And all my days off, I'm on the water. I was barely skateboarding at the time because I was so ate up with fishing.
Yeah.
And I started having people come into me because they heard I was a fisherman and they were also into fishing, but they still wanted normal people tattoos, you know, and I might do a fly or a trout every now and again.
They just wanted it done by somebody that had something in common with them.
Yeah, something you could sit and talk to people about, like, so that you're spending your 4 hours of getting tattooed with a friend rather than with a stranger.
Yeah.
And I was catching like some decent fish, and I started painting a lot of fishing art. And I was just like, I didn't know. I thought maybe one day, if I was lucky, I could get to where I could do maybe 1 or 2 fishing tattoos every couple weeks. That way I could sit down and talk to some anglers and just enjoy that part of my job while still doing normal people tattoos so that I could make a living.
Yeah.
And there was a fish I caught. I don't know. That was probably 2013 and 2014 that I was really starting to try to push it. And then I caught this fish that was like it was kind of a special fish for me. I'd worked really hard to catch it. Like, I kept going back to the same section of river where I'd seen it. And finally I landed it, and I was with my buddy, Greg Shear, and Greg netted it for me. And, you know, we had this big celebration. It was like a special, it was my first like male 30-inch brown trout that it was like a resident. We don't have lake run fish, so they're river residents. So it's different from like a Great Lakes brown. And it was my first male one. I'd caught a hen previous to that, but this was like the big hyped up one. It was tall. It was like everything that you want from, you know, a trophy fish. I mean, probably 12 to 14 pound brown trout. And I'd worked so hard for it, and I landed it, and I went home and I was like, I just want to make a brown trout drawing from that, you know? And so I did like a black and gray brown trout drawing, and I put it on the internet. I was trying to post fishing stuff, and Greg messaged me, who had netted my fish, and said, I want to get it tattooed on me. I'm so happy to have shared in that experience, you know?
That's rad.
And he came in the next day, or maybe, I don't know, next week, something like that. I made time, and we did this big brown trout on his forearm. It was like a full circle kind of closure on the experience for me. And after that, I decided, like, I'm not going to post normal tattoos on the internet anymore. I'm going to keep doing them, but I'm only going to use social media for fishing and trying to push the things that I love rather than just trying to make a living. And I was already booked out far enough that I didn't think it would make a difference in my career. And that's what I did. After probably 6 months, I was doing like 2 to 3 a week. And then within the first year, I was having people travel from out of state. which is crazy because if I had been doing skateboarding tattoos, I would have had no clients because skateboarders are broke. But fly fishermen, fishermen notoriously are a little bougie. And, you'll drive 3 hours to a river to fish for a day and then you'll drive home.
Right.
Like, of course you'll drive 3 hours to get tattooed, you know? At
least you take that home with you more than often than not.
Yeah. I inadvertently found a very dedicated clientele who were passionate about what they love. And conveniently, I love the exact same thing, so I get along with all of them. It's neat. I was a much better or more dedicated angler at the time. Now, when I fish, I'm mostly just taking people, and then I would sleep on the boat ramp so that I could be the first one in the water in the morning.
Nice.
It was normal for me when I heard a car pull in, and that's how I woke up and could get out. And now I'm like, I'll get up around 10 and go poke around for a bit, unless I have people in town.
It's interesting, because what you just said, I was talking to a good buddy Desmond about this, something unrelated, but you are a subculture of a subculture, of a subculture almost, and that is in itself, to have found so many people that look at that and go I want that, I can relate to that, it feels like me, that's crazy.
Wild to me. Yeah, it's wild to me that it works at all. I still am I struggle with it a bit because I have a level of success that I didn't expect to have. And I'm so thankful that anyone gives a shit at all that I want to treat anyone who comes to get tattooed by me just as good as possible. And at the exact same time, I have to balance the workload.
Right.
So it's really hard for me whenever I have people who hit me up and be like, hey, I want to get a logo for my company, or hey, I want to come get this tattoo, and it's not the thing that I do.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if I do those things, then I can't work on I can't stay on the path that I'm on, And so it's hard to maintain a forward focus while being so appreciative of the fact that this is working at all. But I am thankful that it resonates with anyone. I grew up, looking at CCS catalogs and circling skateboards that I thought the art was cool on.
Dude, CCS is from here.
Oh yeah, it's your hood, huh?
Yeah. They're CCS started in San Luis Obispo. That's funny.
Man, the little tiny backpack catalogs that you used to take to high school with you and shit like that.
Little zines almost.
That was my exposure to skateboard culture because they sent me one every month, And so it was there might only be 5 photos in those because they weren't full magazines, but they'd have 5 photos of skateboarding and then just the actual gear.
Yeah.
But Dan Jerhobel had put out this company called Freedom that was FREEDUMB.
Okay.
And it was short-lived for a while, but his art was just so cool. I wasn't even that into art. I was just so into what these certain people were doing, like Todd Bratchard, who did most of the early art for Consolidated, like the Lucky Rabbit's foot board where the rabbit's got his foot. His art, it motivated me so much as a kid just to want to skateboard and to have that stuff because it was so cool. We were broke, so most of the time I skated blank boards from the guy who made them in Arkansas because they're $25. But I always wanted those things, I was so driven by it. And it totally put me on a crazy path that I still don't know how this has worked out. I recently, maybe a year ago, I noticed that Todd Bratchard had commented on some of my art, and I went to his page and it said he was following me, and I was like, this is the same guy. This is the guy. I watched this dude, all his art growing up. I'm such a fan.
That's so cool.
But there's a huge subculture of skateboarding because skateboarding and fly fishing lend themselves to each other. They both change the way you look at the world.
Yep.
You will never drive past a curb, a stair set, a handrail, or a creek or a pond the same way. You will always be craning your neck, trying to think about what possibility exists over there. And there's not many things that change the way you look at the world. If you're a musician, it might change the way you listen to things. But as far as a visual aspect, being creative as someone who does physical application like fly fishing or skateboarding, I see skate spots and fishing spots without meaning to, without intent. I'm always noting those things. And I'll think about them at night where it's like, well, if I approach this way, it could totally work out in places I've never even been. I've just driven by.
Yeah.
I think that fly fishing should be like the end destination for older broken skateboarders also.
It's interesting because I like completely agree with everything you're saying, but like on one hand, like I look at skateboarding and I'm like, this is like we were all the misfits or the weirdos or we didn't fit into the popular stuff. We didn't play baseball or whatever, right? And like then I look at fly fishing and this is like, you know, traditionally, historically, you have money, to your point earlier. Like you're buttoned up. Like
yeah, it was.
And that's what I want. Yeah. I want to talk about that because I find it fascinating because I completely agree with you. Like, oh, look, like that water going around that boulder, I want to fish that. Like,
yeah,
you know, or like that curb or, you know, oh, I can't believe that.
Well, you think where it's like, all right, if you have really good backtails, or I'm not a great at backtails, but I got like pretty good front tails. And so anytime I look at like any little curve ledge or something like that, it's like, how could I approach that to get my trick in?
Right.
And if it's the exact same with fishing where it's like, all right, I like this exact style of application. Yes. Where can I find, like, how can I apply my trick to this fishery? I think that's, having a bag of tricks is a statement, you know, you've used since you were a kid, if you were a skateboarder, and it flips over into fly fishing so easy. The cultures have changed for sure. And a lot of that's due to social media.
Yeah.
And now you have guys who are like David Gravette's an avid fly fisherman, you know, and I remember when his first Creature part came out, he came out in the And Now video, but his first Creature part, I watched that at the skate shop I worked at the time. I want to say he was 17. He might have been 18. We're the same age. Like, I think we're 2 weeks apart. And I remember watching that part and just being blown away that the guy was the same age as me and he skateboarded so good.
Yeah.
And then now, years later, he's been a pro skateboarder for Creature for 17 years. And now he's sponsored by Reddington as a fly fisherman. And like, he holds the door for so many people who are into skateboarding to get into fly fishing. Yeah. He is a gateway for that.
And I don't think that access, it's never been like this. Like, no. It hasn't. People like you, people like him, people like us, one, we weren't invited, and two, they didn't exist in terms of holding the door open.
Well,
it's massive.
There's a thing about this though, is like the original skateboarders came from surfers, and surfers had this really deep rooted history, and we weren't invited to that either. It was the reject skateboarders, or the reject surfers who ended up taking the skateboarding and making it what it is. Yeah. You know, if you go back and look at the history of that, when you had like the original three, you got like Stacy Peralta and you know, those guys, Jay Adams, like those guys were the little punk shits at the waves that weren't getting on because they were like getting treated like they weren't locals.
Totally.
They were the Groms, and they went and made something else. And so I think there's a level of like that goes into what we're doing now, where it's like, fly fishing may have been historic, and it may have been like very secretive and very exclusive.
Elite. Yep.
Elite. And it's like, but we're a culture that's always taken what we wanted.
Yeah.
And
made it our own.
It's like, and made it our own. I didn't have skate parks growing up. I didn't live in an area that had skate parks, you know, like if you were going to go skateboarding, you were going to someone's private property and destroying what they had. It was just part of it. It was like
being creative with just what you could find, what was there. Like you kind of had to almost, it's really interesting too, when you're talking about like, I don't know, there's the sense of like being an individual and like, you know, you're saying like bringing like what you could do. 'Cause you know, not all of us were pros. And so there was like maybe a few tricks that we knew we could do well, and we kind of follow that. And I think that's interesting. Like with fishing, like you're talking about, like I might struggle casting it in the weeds for bass, but like if I'm I just went out fly fishing for my first time a couple weeks ago, and I was like wading out to just open water, and it was like, okay, cool. There's another way I can fish. 'Cause I really struggle with that. And I was having a ton of fun just learning a different way to do it and being like, okay, there's a different way I can fish. I think I might like this a little bit more. So you can bring like a sense of like who you are and almost use your limitations to your benefit.
Well, like Drew was saying, your bag of tricks, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Some people,
your bag of tricks.
Some people cannot throw streamers. Some people like dries are miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really just, and you figure out, I just kick flips all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's the difference of like skateboarding. You have street skateboarders. You always had like street guys, and then you had vert guys, and no one ever called them transition guys until later. Yeah. But let's say I'm talking about tail slides, like front tails. Let's say if I've spent years using that as my go-to trick on a ledge or a spot where it's like, all right, I'm going to front tail this hover, I'm going to do that. And then one day I'm skating a mini ramp with people, and then I'm like, well, I bet I can do them here. I feel like it's the exact same thing where it's like, I'm going to take this street trick, I'm going to apply it to transition. It's the exact same thing in fly fishing when it's like, all right, I've always been a bass fisherman, but now I've got this set of tools. How can I do what I know with this new environment around me? Like how can I take the application of bass fishing and apply it to the tools that are available to me now?
Yeah, it's cool.
And I felt like, I think that's another reason that like skill toys, I consider skateboarding a skill toy. I never really thought of it as an extreme sport. I feel like all skateboarders love to play with skill toys. It doesn't matter if it's a kendama or whatever, anything that you can try to do with your body to make it work. I feel like we want to do to the best of our ability because it's interesting. It's fun to succeed. And I feel like fly fishing feels like that as well, because you can feel validated by learning how to cast better. You can feel validated by learning how to roll mend or reach cast in over a seam in quick water. There's just so much there that makes you feel like you're picking up, and style applies as well. Like when you go to the skate park and you see some guy who rips, but he looks whack. Like not his clothing for the people that are listening that don't skateboard, but like the style of his body, how they carry themselves, because you're telling a story with your posture. And like I've struggled with that my entire life because I'm 6'3" and I'm lanky, and I always have looked odd on a skateboard. But it's the same with fly fishing, where you see someone who's making a great cast, you see another guy who's casting the exact same distance, but it looks terrible.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know, there's just so much crossover. I tried to make a little YouTube series about it that I was doing called Catch a Fish, Do a Kickflip, where I would take
I remember that. I remember you doing that. Yeah.
I only put out one, but I filmed 4, and one with a spinning guy and the rest were with fly fishers. And I need to just edit them and do it. I'm the worst at editing, but
it's interesting though, like what you're saying, like, and I love it. I love the parallels of the casting and the dude that just looks bad. But it's, and the other thing that maybe is the most important aspect of it, like, even the best skateboarders in the world, and even like no one's ever going to be perfect. You can't achieve perfection in either thing.
Yeah,
and it's not even about that. It's
not, but
it's a expression.
I think so much of the world today is like, do it perfectly, and it's just like you like skateboarding and fly fishing. No way, no hell no.
I think if I saw it done perfectly, I wouldn't be that interested.
Yeah.
Nigel Houston put out this part last year that is unbelievable, but it's hard for me to want to watch it because it's so robotic. I mean, it's the best. It's like he's incredible. He's doing these like things that are 20 levels above what people ever thought were possible, but it's just not got the energy that you want. And it's the same in tattooing. It's like seeing a perfect tattoo to me doesn't really make me excited. Seeing a tattoo that's drawn like really well and has like good busy illustration and has energy that carries your eye throughout it. I don't want to look at something and process it that quick and never have to think about it again. I want something that sticks with me. And it's the same for skateboarding or fly fishing. Those fish that you catch that were tricky and it was a puzzle are the ones that you still think about rather than the ones that came easy.
100%.
I don't know. Yeah. I go on about it, man.
I love it. Shit. This is cool. It's fun because like Tim and I talk about, this sort of crossover stuff a lot. And it's really interesting because I'm thinking back to those times when you'd roll up to a skate spot as a kid and there'd be like someone new, right? And it for the most part, unless they're a total like dick, it would be like quick, fast friends.
Yeah.
Like you're just like,
that's your homie.
Yeah. You're like, oh, cool. Like And then you end up skating with them a bunch, and it's like talking to you. It's like, oh yeah.
And that culture
there's a rapport instantly, and it sounds like you've had that with people out there too, you know?
Absolutely.
And that culture has not existed in fly fishing. In fly fishing, it's been the opposite for a really long time. And I think, like, you know, one of the reasons that I have this store that I like decided to, when I got laid off from my corporate job, like pursue a future in hunting and fishing was because of the kindness of a fly fishing shop in Texas.
Right.
You know, and those guys would be like, this is where you're going to walk. This is how many steps you're going to take, and you're going to turn, you're going to fish that right there, and you're going to catch a fish. And it's like,
where were you?
I was in the Austin area, but it was Living Waters up in Round Rock.
Cool. Yeah, I've been there.
Cool shop. Those are good people. But they're, you know, these are guys too who like, and gals who their livelihood depends on it because they're guides. But they know that, like, you know, I don't have a boat, and like I need help finding spots sometimes, just like anybody. And that wasn't always the culture of it.
Well,
you know,
while they may be fishing guides, they still also have a store, which means they sell fishing stuff.
Yeah,
and they only sell that if people love it and fish.
100%.
Same thing with skate shops and stuff like that.
Totally.
It's like, you don't want to blow out your skate spots. You want to get your tricks there before anyone else gets them there. Yeah. But you can't sell things if there's no skateboarders.
But
it's an odd thing when you monetize the things you love.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I do love when there's kindness in the culture of it. And I still get treated bad sometimes, which is funny.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I still get treated poorly on occasion, which it's funny to me because I like have worked in fly fishing for a while now. And, you know, it's like most of the people who are talking down to me, like I know their favorite angler, and I know the fly tires they look up to, and the companies they're using. I'm friends with the owners and things like that at this point, but it's just part of it. There's a thing that I'm going to say it, and I want to give a little preface to it, because I'm not religious. I live in the South, and it's a very religious area, and I don't believe in any of that. But I like to talk about the Bible sometimes because I think it's the oldest reference of like human nature. And the very first book of the Bible is, you know, they talk about Adam and Eve, and Eve eats the fruit of knowledge. She eats from, you know, the apple. It's from the tree of knowledge. She gains all the knowledge of the world. They get shamed from it. But what I take from that bit, because God kicks them out of the garden, he's furious with him. And I want to be clear that I don't believe in any of this, but it's a very old story. And what I take from that story is that God kicked her out because he couldn't stand a fucking know-it-all. And it's the first story of the Bible, and it's telling you not to be a fucking know-it-all. And everyone takes that the devil corrupted them. And it's like, man, like, don't act like you have all the knowledge of the world.
Some humility.
You can hang out, you know? Have some humility. You can stay in the garden. But that's the thing that, like, I still get talked down to sometimes in fly fishing. I'll go into fly shops and I'll still get talked to like I don't know what I'm doing. And it just, I get it. I totally get it, because it is the original human nature to be a fucking know-it-all.
Yeah.
And so I try to give some grace to those people, you know, they don't think twice about me. I'll never see them again. It's not like that matters, but in my own head, I try not to let them ruin my day because they're just being know-it-alls. And I do it sometimes too, I'm sure. And it's been opened up a bit more though, because there's so many more tattooed anglers, and there's so many more poor fly fishermen who have just learned how to do it cheaply.
Well, not to mention, I think, you know, we go back to that access conversation. It's like these companies, Reddington, Orvis, like they're doing a really good job of making it more accessible. Like, you know, I sell a rod reel line kit for $200 for somebody that like wants to get into fly fishing, and that's awesome. That's skating blanks, you know, like
I love it.
Yeah, no, I do too. I think it's needed, and I think because there's so many good byproducts of that, because then they get into like, well, hey, I want to like make sure my water's clean. I want to do the trash pickup. I want to, like, you know, so it's like the snowball keeps rolling.
Yeah. Totally.
Once you get them into it, and I think that's super, super important.
The what you're saying about the know-it-all stuff though, I actually thought that was really interesting because I feel like going back to like showing up at that skate park and like you see some random person, that's usually what it means when they're a dick. They're the know-it-all. They're the like person that's otherwise like, hey, it looks like you're like doing this, like maybe try that. Like I saw you kind of come down and you weren't quite, that's why you might not be landing or you just need to commit or whatever. And that's, so for me, like I didn't grow up fishing or hunting or anything. That's kind of what this podcast is about.
Yeah.
It's called The Curious Hunter. And I started it just to kind of like, my friend was like, dude, you should document like your like transition into like this world. Cause it was something that I, didn't know anything about. And it was a little intimidating at first. I started watching like some of the meat eater shows and which was cool, but like, I didn't know anybody that was like me, like full sleeves and used to skate.
There's some guys on there though, who are rad, like on Meat Eater
that
alone.
Kind of opened it, like seeing Jesse Griffith on there.
Jesse
too,
Griffin,
like,
man, Jesse's the one, dude. He's the man.
Yeah, Jesse's a good dude. I've been fortunate to spend a lot of time with that dude.
So cool though is like I have been into some gun shops and like there's some cool people, but they are a little bit intimidating. And it kind of reminds me of like walking into a tattoo shop for the first time when you're 18 and you're like, I don't feel like I belong here. But you walking into Tim's shop or meeting people that are kind of like on the same plane as us, they are super welcoming and super inviting and they're not know-it-alls. And I think that's really key,
It's funny to me is that I like really am an advocate of gatekeeping. That's become a word that has been like weaponized and people use it to like act like you're doing something wrong where it's like, well, you're gatekeeping, like that's unacceptable. But I think there's a way to approach things with respect. So it's like
wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, like I love skateboarding and it hurts my soul that skateboarding is mostly owned by corporate companies now.
Yeah.
It's hard to buy a skateboarder owned shoe. I'm wearing Converse right now. Nike's own Converse. It's like I'm essentially supporting Nike when I buy Chuck Taylors. Now, I've worn Chuck Taylors since I was 2 years old. It was my first pair of shoes when I was a baby. I might have been like 8 months for all I know, was a pair of red Chuck Taylors. So while I feel like I'm staying true to myself, I still know that my money's going to a corporate skateboarding company. Jamie Thomas just put out a new shoe company called Warsaw. I just got my first ones in the mail. I'm so hyped to be able to support him through that because I love what that dude's doing with it and his attitude. But there are things like that where it's like skateboarding wasn't supposed to let that in and we totally did. And now fly fishing was owned already by corporate and we have moved in and have taken over a bit. And now that you have a lot of smaller rod companies, you got a lot of guys like me. I just met a guy, I was just working in New York a couple weeks ago and I was walking on a rainy day. I walked into the Filson store just literally to get out of the rain. And there was a guy upstairs like showing his handmade rods. It was Hudson Valley Rod Company, I believe. Sure. And he makes rods and nets up in Hudson Valley. And I went up and talked to him. And as soon as I cleared the stairs, he was like a tattooed young guy and he recognized me immediately. And I hung out up there for like 30 minutes or so talking to him. And it was just one of those things where it's like, you really see that subculture that is developed in our in the subculture. It's like you had the group of fly fishing and now you have this lowbrow approach to it.
Yeah.
But I still am a fan of gatekeeping. Like tattooing shouldn't be for everyone. It should be uncomfortable when you get in because you're supposed to weed out the turds. And that way you don't have like a bunch of shitheads essentially molesting your skate spots or molesting your fisheries. That's how you end up with like Busch Lights all over, or Busch Light cans and Monster Energy drinks all over the trout streams. Is you, which I know I'm probably going to get roasted by people for saying that. I feel like I try to approach everything with kindness. And so if people have questions for me, I'm always happy to help them. And if someone wants to learn about something that I love, I'm always happy to teach them.
That's the difference, Drew, is like you could be a gatekeeper and just like put a hand up in their face, but that's not what you're doing. You're inviting them, you're welcoming,
show them
like,
the right way.
If you're going to do it,
yeah.
Here's how you.
And that's what we have talked about a lot. I get so many people in my store, like every day, people are like, I want to know more about this. I want to learn about this. And like, just like Living Waters, just like you do, just like, we're talking about, it's like, well, here, let me show you, tell you how to do it the right way. So then you get them off on the right foot. And that, to me, that's not gatekeeping.
Yeah. I just think the word has been demonized. And so it's hard for me to be an advocate of it because I feel like people hear it the wrong way. But it's like,
no, I know what you mean.
If it's like, I think having to earn respect doesn't mean that you're being gatekept. I think having to earn knowledge doesn't mean it's being kept from you, you know?
Same page, man.
I'm gonna completely butcher this, but like George Orwell talked about like the future of like dystopian society, that we were going to be, all the knowledge in the world was going to be held by the higher power and we weren't going to be allowed to have it. And I want to say that it was Socrates. This is where I'm going to mess it up because it may not have been. No, who wrote a Brave New World? It starts with an S. Mark S. I don't know. I hate that I'm
Aldous Huxley.
This. Huxley. Okay. Yeah. Huxley. Yeah. Man. So he talked about how there would be all the information available to us, but we would be so distracted by it being made as entertainment that we wouldn't care. And that's essentially where we're at as a world, where it's like you have the world at your fingertips. You could learn about anything on the supercomputer that's in your pocket. You could learn how to double haul in 10 seconds, but instead you're looking at TikTok videos of people dancing, you know? And so as far as like the knowledge that I have that I want to share with people, I just want to share it correctly.
Right.
Because I want to make sure that it's going to the right person and that it resonates correctly. I don't know. It's like you teaching someone or showing someone your favorite fishing spot and they go there and keep every fish or, you know, finger their gills essentially.
Yeah.
So, well, like I go on a tangent all the time. I'm a tangent speaker, but I originally talking about where it's like, I want it to be kind and I want to be available for people, but I want to make sure that they deserve it also, or at least have the correct approach.
We have to, especially with like, you know, the water, the rivers, the lakes, the mountains, the forests. It's a limited resource, man. And so we have to take care of it. And we have to make sure that like the people that are coming, you know, I have a nephew who's 10 years old and all he wants to do is hunt and fish. That's all he wants to do. And it's like really, really special because I get to be like, no, buddy, you can't do it that way. Like we got to do it this way because it's the right way, or like that's how you honor the fish, or that's how you honor the bird, or, you know, and so yeah, it is gatekeeping, and you're right, it did become a dirty word, but I just feel like it would be irresponsible of you or us not to be that way.
Yeah. You have to be an ambassador of what you love in a way that's correct. You know, I've always like said that like I love fly fishing for the reason that you have to learn how to move in front of a fish and you have to be seductive in a manner.
Yeah.
I hold it so dear to me and I want to share it with everyone who wants to hold it dear. You know, I don't want to, it's tricky. I have a YouTube channel. I don't use it a lot. And originally I wanted to like use it to teach people to fish. And now I just want to like spread my little subculture I'm doing further.
Yeah.
And so I'm like trying to get people to go fishing with me and get stuff that they catch tattooed on them and stuff like that.
That's rad.
But
I'm so down for that.
We'll come out there and do that someday.
Please do. But that way I can like keep it all in the family essentially, you know?
Yeah.
And I want to know more like skateboarding fishermen. I started a skateboard brand. Have you seen that?
Yeah. I was going to ask like how did you go from, I was showing him those decks. I'm like, dude, you got to put these up in the shop. Just even hang them on the wall or maybe even sell them. But like, so that seems like the next sort of like phase, right? So you're moving through, tattooing, and then you get into tattooing this kind of fish because you're out there fishing. And then there's these physical products. So how did you move into that phase?
That started when I really started trying to push the fishing thing on Instagram. I wanted to like do a bunch of fish art, but if you do a tattoo, you can't post the tattoo every day. You can only post it once, or people like think it's kind of corny. Like if I post the same tattoo every week, people will lose interest. But I thought that if I made some stickers that I could share them occasionally and people would still be down with it, and that other people might share it and tag me in it and stuff like that. And I was like, maybe that could help this grow. So I started making stickers for the sole purpose of having fishing art to post in the hopes that people would get fish tattoos. And then COVID hit. And I've been doing stickers. I think I had an online store for 4 years when COVID hit. It might have been 3 years. But my reach changed so much because while everyone was just sitting at home looking at their phones in the COVID shutdown, not knowing what the future was like, with money coming in still for most people, not for everyone, I posted art every day on the internet. I stayed at home a lot and I drew so much. And I just posted art every single day. And I started selling the shit out of stickers. And for that first year of that, I made a couple other products, but it was mostly just stickers. But it, like, my business, like, multiplied by 6 probably that year. And we couldn't tattoo for 3 months in Arkansas during the COVID shutdown. It was illegal. You could get your hair cut, you go to the thrift store, but you couldn't get a tattoo. And
makes total sense.
Yeah, well, you know, there's a lot of not knowing there. It's just odd when the people in power don't know and tell you what to do. But it's I have, you know, I've got forgiveness for it because they didn't know what they were doing. They still don't. you know, but they're just they're just figuring it out.
Yep.
It's like parenting, I think, where like you're just a person and you were just fucking your partner, and the next thing you know, there's a baby you got to raise and try to teach how to be a good human. And it's like, I was just trying to get my nut, and now there's this thing. That's how I feel like the government treats our people. But in the COVID shutdown, when we couldn't work, I replaced my income by selling stickers. And I was making the exact same amount of money as I was tattooing.
What?
And I was
That's
a busy
crazy.
tattooer. It's crazy. Thanks so much to everyone who ordered stuff then too, because that motivated me once we could go back to work. And it was like, okay, I can go back and I can do these normal people tattoos, but I can make just as much money from my couch, just drawing and selling stickers. And it's not that hard to fill envelopes, you know? So when I started going back to work and tattooing again, I was being more selective about what I did, and I wasn't working quite as much, and I was focusing more on the sticker game. And then in 2021, that kind of came to a head because I worked at a shop with a bunch of guys who were great tattooers who'd been tattooing longer than me. And I was the younger guy, and I was not as dedicated as I should have been because my interest and my alliances had changed because fly fishing had supported my life, and the people in fly fishing were paying for me to live through buying art from me,
right,
as well as coming to get tattooed. So it's like, so let's say Saturdays were walk-in days. So even if we were booked out a year, we didn't take appointments on Saturdays.
Right.
It was walk-ins only. So Saturday, I got some kid hit me up from Chicago, or he's going to come down Saturday. He wants to get a smallmouth bass. It's like, I can't make an appointment because it's walk-in day, and that's the shop's rule. So it's like, why am I doing that? Because this kid wants to support what I'm doing. This kid buys my stickers. This kid is going to support my life. And these people who are getting walk-ins are just going to buy this one tattoo, and I may never see him again. So I didn't see it as a worthy, I shouldn't say a worthy investment, because I also don't ever want to insult anyone who's still doing walk-in Saturdays anywhere, because tattooing needs that. I just didn't see it as feeding the fire that I was trying to build. And so I essentially had it kind of out with some of my coworkers at the time and told them that I didn't want to do appointments on Saturdays. And these are all guys that I love, but when you work that close with people, you can, you butt heads. It's like having family. And I started taking appointments. I was like, fuck it, I'm going to just take appointments with these guys who are coming in from out of town. And these guys who I work with can just get mad at me.
Yeah.
And they did naturally. And I was like, well, I don't need to work here anymore. I can make a living from anywhere in the world because I have this social media thing working for me, and I'm selling, these stickers and I'd made some other products. So I talked to my wife. We weren't married yet. And I told her that I didn't want to work at that shop anymore, that I wanted to go live in South Utah because it's in the middle of nowhere and there's fishing and hunting and everything you want in outdoors is there. in large amounts, and there's not a lot of people, and it's relatively affordable. And she didn't want to move, but we kind of like
Utah. No.
Yeah, she didn't want to do it. Her family all lives in Central Arkansas, where we live now. We moved here to be near her family. But at that time, we decided we would go live in our travel trailer and live on the road.
I knew this. I remember that. I remember when you did that.
Yep. I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to move to South Utah. I had money saved, and I was like, I could buy one of those pods or get one of them to move all our shit out there. It's like you can get a house for $500 a month in Loa, Utah, because there's 400 people there, and it's like, and I can make a living selling art online, and we can just hunt and fish and walk our dogs, and like we can go to a city once a month, and I'll tattoo for a week, and the rest of the time we'll just fuck off. And I thought it would be awesome, but she didn't see it that way because she's her own person and has a career and things like that. Naturally, I was just not really thinking the way I probably should have. But she met me in the middle. She thought she was meeting me in the middle at least, and proposed that we live in a camper. And we did that. She did. She wanted me to get like she didn't want to go live in a camper, but when I said okay, there became a list of very specific demands about what the camper needed to be on. So essentially, I bought an old air.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
It was beautiful, dude. It cost way more than I wanted it to.
100%.
But we lived in it for a year, and then we found out we were moving to Russellville. Katie's dad is sick, and when we found out that he was sick, we were like to a point where he is now. It's like we have to move there to be there for him and for her mom through this. And that's when I decided, like, well, I've been selling stickers. I'd sold so many stickers on the road. I'd tattoo once a month, and I never spent any, like my savings stayed the exact same. I'd tattoo for like 4 days a month, and I would just sell stickers, and we'd spend money, but we'd still always have the exact same amount in the bank account. Thanks to the supportive people of fly fishing. And when I decided that we were going to move here, or we made that decision, I was like, well, this will be cool for me because my art's grown, my social media's grown, and I've gotten way handier at digital design. So maybe I could make some actual products.
Right.
And so the last 3 months of us living on the road, when we found out we were going to move here, I decided that I would make my first skateboard. And I figured it would take about 2 or 3 months to get them. And I ordered my first skateboards. I picked them up in South Carolina while visiting my sister. And then the next week we drove here to Russellville and moved into our now home. And that's when I started really focusing on putting out like a bunch of things. I think up until we moved here in 2022, I'd done like some belt buckles, some keychains, and then I would do shirts on occasion and stuff like that. But when we moved here is when I was like, I'm going to do an actual art store online and have everything. And when I saw how bad our skateboarding scene was hurting in Russellville and how there's nothing available to these kids, I was like, how can I help this situation without breaking the bank for myself?
Right.
And that's why I decided I would start a skateboard brand. Because at first I'd just done my first run of skateboards. It was a hot stuffed devil riding a trout and it said born to raise hell.
Yeah.
And they weren't for a brand. It was just like a design I liked. And I decided to start a brand for the sole purpose of being able to hook my local kids up with skate stuff as a tax write-off.
Yeah.
Because otherwise there's no way it's feasible.
Yeah.
But I didn't do a separate brand. So it's all under Drooler. Kingfisher Skateboards is also under Drooler, so that I can make money from selling these products and then lose money on skateboards. And then kind of it all works out.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But that's how that came about. I know
That's
it was
awesome.
a big roundabout of getting there.
No, it's cool.
I was going to ask
Yeah.
you about the travel trailer, and I'm glad it came up because I specifically remember that I did something similar which was buy a vintage travel trailer, and way too much, way too expensive.
It was something else.
Money pit.
Well, Airstreams do maintain their value to an extent, but what I had wanted to purchase and what we ended up with were just my budget for leaving to go, when I was like, all right, I can spend this much money before we leave from my savings so that we have enough money to live on the road. we went almost triple over my budget.
Yeah.
And I don't own a credit card. So for me to go triple over my budget means like the day I bought our camper, I think I had like $12 in the bank afterwards. It was like, all right, I got to go to the shop tomorrow, back to work. You know, like I did it up, and but it's all been fine. Money doesn't make a difference in the world anyway, and I still have that camper. It's in our garage, and we use it as a guest house for everyone who comes to get tattooed and stuff like that.
That's awesome. Well, I'll have to get a deck and have you sign it, and I'll hang it up in here for sure.
Yeah. I just had a cool thing. I got a message last night, and I don't know if this is going to happen yet because I literally I never checked the Kingfisher Instagram, but I checked it last night. I had a message from a kid he's on a native reservation, and they have a skate park. And it's one of their only things they have available to them as far as like recreation. So skateboarding is a huge part of their culture. And I messaged him to get more information about what reservation and all that. But he was telling me that their team, like their reservation, they have a team there, and they're called the Kingfishers.
No.
And he was asking me if there was any way I would consider selling him boards at a discount if he'd buy 20 boards. And I haven't even... this is one message I got last night. It was like 4 paragraphs. So the kid really put some time into it, but he looked like a young kid. And I reached back out to get some more info, but I think I'm going to design a new board. I want to get like some traditional native patterns from him, and I want to make them a board.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm going to use that. Yeah. I think that'd be so cool. And if it's close enough, if it's far, I'm not going to hand deliver them, but if it's close enough for me to do it, I'll go hand deliver them. But I just want to be using the little bit of tools that I have to just gas up my culture and feed those
community,
subcultures.
Man.
Yeah. Community is the only thing that I even think has any value.
Yep.
Dude, that's all that this store, this podcast, that's all we talk about is that's the value of all of it.
Yeah.
Dude, it's the most important thing. I've been trying to get our skate park we have added on to here. We have a concrete park, but it's not tight. And there's nothing to learn to skateboard on there. Like if you never board slid a rail, there's no flat rail. You have a 4-stair rail or like a 7-stair rail that's way too steep. If you don't know how to do a rock to fakie, you can either learn in like a 3-foot that is so fast that like I would say there's a foot of straight transition on this 3-foot. It is so fast. And if you watch someone rock to fakie it, you're going to give them props. It's not like a mini ramp. It is gnarly. It's gnarlier than most Jersey barriers. It's so gnarly.
So the whole park is designed with like a high barrier of entry, basically.
It's such a high skill level, and there's nowhere for someone to fall in love. You see kids show up and they instead of falling in love with skateboarding, they get broke off or they get frustrated. Most of our younger skateboarders, they just roll around the park. Like they can't do tricks. They just pump the ramps. And if they can get up and down all the ramps, it's like they're the locals too. Like the kids who skate there the most can barely do tricks. We have one good skateboarder, and we have one kid who's kind of driven. This kid, Jacob's learning. He's like been a little shit ass, and he's learning to be like, it's cool watching him turn into like a better kid. I think he's 15 now, and he's like, or about to be 15. He's turning into like more of an adult. But he's learning to skate. Like he's one of the only ones that's learned to kickflip and stuff like that. But I've been trying to get an addition put on, and I meet with our mayor once a month, and we've been doing this thing. We've filled out grant applications, and there's been a whole, like every grant application has a list of requirements where it's like, you have to have community service days, you need a 3D rendering of the park you want to build and bids and all that. And so I designed the addition, and I had a 3D rendering made out of pocket myself. And we just went and gave our presentation for a grant that's like a matching grant for half the cost. And we'll know in the next month if we're going to get it. But at the presentation, I talked to them purely about community, where it's like I could give you all these different reasons about why we need a skate park. But most importantly is that our skate park has got such a high level of entry that it runs people off, and they don't get exposure to community.
Yeah.
And what the skateboarding community did for me, like I wouldn't know my wife if it wasn't for, meeting Jed Ferguson through skateboarding, who introduced me to tattooing. I would have never moved to the city she lived in. I wouldn't live in Russellville now. I wouldn't maybe not be fly fishing artist, or a fishing artist.
Probably not.
I might be working in a photo lab at a Walmart if it wasn't for what the community of skateboarding gave me. And there's nothing wrong with working in a photo lab at a Walmart. I'd probably be happy there too.
I don't think they have photo labs still, do they?
Yeah, I think that those might have died. I should ask you guys, since you grew up skateboarders, have you guys kept up with what Geoff Rowley's doing?
Dude, I've been trying to bring Geoff Rowley up this whole conversation.
I work for a creative agency, and we were pitching a client, and I don't think I can say the client's name yet, but I literally used Geoff Rowley as an example of how like hunting, said hunting is the new skateboarding, which is honestly the outdoors is like, this is the new skateboarding, you know?
So I should say it because I know his name is Rowley, but I grew up
in the South. All did. Yeah.
I grew up in the South.
I say
CCS
Rowley.
Magazines. Yeah. That's what the shoes were always called to me, were the Rowleys. And I know it's Rowley. But I didn't know that he was working in the outdoors.
Yeah.
So Silverware is his company.
Yeah, I know. So I just found out he did a Nines Club episode, and I listened to the Nines Club a lot, and or the Nine Club. And I heard that episode. I listened to the whole thing. I was like, the entire time I was listening to it, I was just blown away. It was so cool for me because it's like, look at this guy. I love seeing tattooers make art that isn't tattoo art. I love seeing tattooers be creative outside of tattooing. I love seeing skateboarders get involved in the outdoors. It's like one of those things that knowing it brings me joy, and to see one of my childhood heroes like doing what he's doing. So I sent him an Instagram message, and we talked a little bit on there, which I was blown away by that. And I bought a knife from Silverware and stuff, and it's a great knife, dude. I've been so hyped on it.
I'm trying to I want to carry him in the store here. Like, we have his partner in Silverware is a hunting guide who is local here to this area, and guides on a ranch over by Hearst Castle, where you were talking about earlier.
Awesome. Yeah.
And so I was introduced to him, and now I want to have both of them on the podcast. And
that'd be so cool, man.
It'd be super fun. Yeah.
Can't wait to listen. Yeah, that would be so rad. I bet he'd do it too. He seems like so pleasant. And just the fact that like growing up a skateboarder, all the guys that I thought were like the most famous, you know, like the other day I bought some of those Warsaws, and I went to the Warsaw Instagram, and I just messaged him to be like, hey, I wear an 11 but in Converse I wear a 10.5 because they're like long and thin. So what size should I get? And Jamie Thomas messaged me back to tell me that I should get a 10.5.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's like,
so approachable.
What? You know, if you could have told me at age 12 that one day Jamie Thomas would send me a message, even if it was just to tell me about a shoe size, I would have been blown away. And Geoff Rowley, man, he's doing all that outdoorsy stuff.
Yeah, he just got back from New Zealand, I think.
I've been keeping up with it now. I was removed, and so I didn't know, but
and he's still shredding too.
He's so good. I feel a little bad that I'm just using his awesome knife to open up cardboard box. But it's like, oh yeah, I got this here. I'll use that.
Yeah.
I love seeing that. Gravette so cool. Also, I don't know if you guys keep up with Dave, but David Gravette, dude, he's doing a YouTube thing where he's just doing fishing and skating mashups.
Yeah.
He came and did my series where I take people fishing and they get tattooed.
Oh, cool.
Awesome.
And I've got a board coming out with Creature soon.
No way, dude. That's rad.
It was
really
funny.
Cool too.
I was in storage like right before I came to record this, and like I had some decks, and like one was a stereo Clint Peterson deck, and he's got like the vintage like Fly Fisherman on it. So I need to hang that in here. And the other one was a chocolate deck that was like chocolate spelled out, but it was a stream, and it had like Fly Fisherman on it. You remember that one?
So rad. Yeah, I do.
I need to get him up in the shop here.
I like Stereo is the company that inspires like most of the colors that I use for making skateboards.
Oh, wow.
Cool. All those old Stereo designs, and like I really like, I literally, when I go to like make my color palette for designing a skateboard, I usually pull up a couple Stereo boards to pick, because those are the ones that I want them to look like Jason Lee growing up was one of the heroes. And
dude, that's another one. Like Jason Lee, I had dinner with Jason Lee, like, because I worked for Stereo for like a very small period of time, and it's like, how am I sitting across the table and down a little ways? from Jason Lee.
Yeah.
You know, skateboarding first and foremost, but
he's got a photography store in Eagle Rock, California. I think it's Eagle Rock.
Yeah.
Now that he opened with Raymond Molinar, and I think he's there every day, like just selling camera gear and photography and his books he makes and stuff. Like I think he's just living like a very true to form life now. Awesome. I don't know the man at all, but I feel like from what I keep up with that he's taken his success and he's just used it to be true to what he
wants
knows.
To do. Yeah.
I love it, dude. That's the dream, you know, getting to a point where you can just do what you want.
Well, that's what we're all trying to do, right? That's why this is here. That's why, you know, why you're doing what you're doing.
And this isn't purposely trying to wrap it up, but, and not that we need to wrap it up, but everything we're talking about, and you're kind of talking about falling in love with, you know, skateboarding and fishing but also the idea of like, you know, trying to figure out what gatekeeping means, which is really more just trying to, you know, instill a sense of respect for what people are doing, whether it's tattooing, skateboarding, fishing, hunting, whatever. But I think what's interesting is that I feel like the best way to learn how to respect something is to fall in love with it, because you learn to like appreciate it deeply in a way where you almost sort of make it becomes your identity. Like skateboarding becomes your identity. So you're going to respect that sport. And I think what's cool is like this artistic expression that you're doing. And even if it's an expression of like trying to build community here at Sheepshead, like that to me it's almost like we're trying to make people fall in love with it in a way that they will, you know, ultimately like focus on conservation and like things like that. So that is like a way of respecting it, right? There's
don't just take.
Just don't be an idiot when you're out there fishing or hunting, but also what's the like more macro of that when it comes to conservation and protecting these like wild
You don't want to be
know?
just a taker.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I do one of those. I did like every couple of weeks I do those Instagram questions, ask me anythings, and like somebody's like, I really want to get into hunting and fishing. I'm like, that was one of the bullet points was like, don't just take, you have to give too.
Yeah. Well, I think when you really start, Orson Scott, Ender's Game, the novel Ender's Game, he talks about how you can't fully understand anything without loving it.
Right.
Like you have to actually love it to fully understand it. And it's a beef in the novel where it's like he can't he fully understands his enemy, and so it's hard for him to want to pursue destroying it because he loves them because he understands them. I feel like you can't really devote yourself enough to something to understand it without falling in love with it along the way. Another thing, you mentioned earlier that John mentioned earlier that skateboarding was more for the rejects. And it was at the time where it was like the Misfits. And I felt like tattooing was kind of like that as well. And when I got into fly fishing, I actually felt that a bit because it was so taboo to the traditional bass fishing that I grew up in.
Yeah, especially in the South.
I felt like I was the guy showing up to the fishery with like the skateboard because I would show up with a fly rod. And I feel like the acceptance into those things when you become accepted and when you can carry on a conversation with another fly angler and feel confident in what you say and also not feel like you're, you know, jerking off by talking too much or trying to sound too cool. I feel like when you just get to be a part of it, like you want to be a part of it and you want to be a part of it. And then before you know it, like before you even realize it, you're there. I think that's one of the most validating moments of it, where it's like you've struggled to you appreciate the subculture and you're interested in it, and the next thing you know, it's your subculture, and then you love it and you want to see it grow, and you want to also see it held dear. I don't think that you should necessarily protect it because like fly fishing, skateboarding, tattooing, any of the things I do, they don't need me to protect them. They just need me to appreciate them and to share my appreciation. You know, Jake Phelps, Thrasher editor Jake Phelps, he always said the skateboard doesn't owe you shit. It owes you will bite in the rain. You owe skateboarding, you know? That's awesome. And I feel that about all that I do.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, that's really the best way I can put it is how Jake Phelps says it, but I guess I could put it to everything else where it's like fly fishing also doesn't owe you a fucking thing.
Oh,
and
totally.
Tattooing doesn't owe you anything. You owe it. You're lucky to participate, and you should treat it that way. The kids I just had here, I wish that so most of my clients come from out of state because I live in a small city, and I try to be very hospitable because I know, like, let's say if I go work in New York, if I got to travel all the way up there, that's a whole travel day. I'm staying in a hotel. It's a lot. And when people come from there to here to get tattooed, I see their flight. I see their expenses. I see the effort they're putting in. It's not like a normal person hitting me up from up the road.
Right.
So I try to be very hospitable, and I always try to like, well, hey, if you're going to travel that far, do you want to try to fish for a day? Or do you need a place to stay or something like that to make the trip easier? A lot of times I go pick my clients up at the airport to drive to Little Rock Airport back here, then back to drop them off and back here is 300 miles round trip because 75 miles to the airport. But like I'll do that 3 times in a week sometimes because I'm just so thankful that people care enough to travel all the way down here.
Yeah.
And the kids I just had here came from Atlanta. They flew into Memphis, rented a car, drove to Little Rock, got an Airbnb. They like wanted to see Little Rock, but they came. I took them fishing on the Little Red on Saturday, and then I took them fishing yesterday here, like locally. We got caught in a gnarly storm.
I saw that. You guys were drenched.
Dude,
I mean,
those poor kids too. Yeah, they came so far, and the Little Red was just so crowded on Saturday. Like there were so many people, we could barely fish. And then yesterday, the rain was supposed to start afternoon, and I'm dropping my boat into a very large river, rowing upstream for 30 minutes, and then pulling into a little backflow to target gar and catfish and drum and stuff like that with a fly rod. And I brought out, there's 3 of them, which so I had a kayak for one of them, and then I had my boat to carry the other 2, and we row all the way up there. Like I rowed my ass off to get up there. Finally get in this little cut in, and we hadn't pulled in there for 10 seconds when the wind started and then the rain started. But man, they were just so positive and so rad.
Cool.
They were such cool kids. They've got a little fishing group they do called the Down Yonder Fishing Club and they're from Atlanta, and they're all in their like, mid 20s to early 30s, and so rad, tattoo collectors, like just cool dudes. And it made me feel like I feel like I planted some seeds and I've been watering them, and then to finally just see the fact that it's like, oh man, those grew and they're already bearing fruit.
Yeah.
And like, it's so rad. That's awesome. So I think that there's been a lot of success with the subculture growth, and then with the crossovers of the two. And I can only imagine where it's going to end up. Like, I really like with the people who are involved, like Moses Akinnon.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about? The great front nose slice guys.
I don't know how to say his last name either.
Yeah. So he's up in Canada now, and he's like, all he does is fish. He like lives in BC and he just fishes every day. And he's an ambassador for that. Andy Howe, if you remember Andy Howe, Andy's rode for New Deal originally, and then like he started Element, I believe. I think he named Zero. I think Jamie got the name for Zero from Zero Sophisto, which was Andy Howe's company. But Andy does nothing but fish now. He started like a fishing skate brand over on the East Coast called Ghost Ship Supply.
Yeah, I know.
But there's so much. There's so much now with the crossover. You guys' area down in I want to say he's in LA, and I may mess it up, but Charles Belnavis, his Instagram's Tattoona, and he's been around. He does a lot of fishing tattoos. They're not quite traditional. They're a little more stylized, but like, dude, probably like a 35-year tattooer, like light-skinned black dude, grew up in fishing and skateboarding and punk rock, and like, I don't know, I just feel like it's everywhere now. And it's so cool to see, man.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that the more you always think that if like the things you love become oversaturated, it might water them down a bit. But I feel like what we got going on kind of roots out the false people and only keeps the real ones.
Well,
like the
and
real
I think
recognizes real.
I think a big part of that is subculture of a subculture of a subculture. right? Like that's the weed, that's the filter. So
I mean, I think also it's that wanting to celebrate being an individual. Like you kind of can't take that away from the people that really want it. So even though there might be some of these, you know, big companies that buy the smaller companies, that will always happen no matter what, you know, but the people who really know where to go to truly enjoy something, whether it's fishing or skateboarding or like tattoo collectors, you kind of, you got to know. And I think that's something you kind of can't take away. And if anything, it really comes through that community, like that you're building. Like you said, you're watering it, seeing how it grows, and it becomes something like true, you know, something that is real.
I love it, man. Yeah. I'm so tickled. I also like that now, like there's like Danny Reed is an exceptional tattooer from Crooked Creek Holler. Like he's so good. I would never even think that like I'm gonna ever be on that level. You know, Dan Santoro, who's like very reputable tattooer from like Northeast New York area, has gotten into fishing in the past handful of years, and he's really in it. And like you got all these guys here, just these heavy hitters. I never think I'm gonna be to that point necessarily, but I'm very stoked that people who come and get tattooed by me feel like they're getting a badge from the subculture.
Yeah.
And it's like they get to walk into a fly shop and it gets recognized, and they get to feel like they're wearing something that represents their passion and their love, and they get to show it off. And that is one of the coolest things, man. I'm so tickled about it. I live in this little town too. So the people that come here bring those cultures here with them.
Yeah.
Like one of the kids yesterday has got so many nice tattoos from so many artists whose names I know. I never get to see that stuff here, you know? And so for them to come bring it to me is awesome.
That's really
cool. I need to get a little bit more of like the skateboarding coming to Russellville. That would be rad. If I could get just some more skateboarders here.
Dude, you got to put on like a skate and music fest or something.
Oh, dude, I don't think I'll ever.
It's big undertaking.
There's so much energy. Need to get someone to do it and me just show up.
I mean, that park,
like as a guest,
you know, you got in the works talking to the mayor.
Yeah. If it works out, man, if we get an addition, we had a contest here last year that a company put on, and it was a really great experience. And if we get a little addition, like what I want to build, I think that people will start stopping by. Like, I think it'll become a little more of a destination.
And that's what we need to do. Like right now, we're putting out a call. Call to arms. If you want to donate, if you want to like be a company that comes on and puts on a show or a concert or both, Russellville, Arkansas.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you know, you see, like, it kind of hurts my soul sometimes because if I'm looking at social media, and I should say this, I make a living because of social media, but I don't spend as much time on there as like you would think. I spend a lot of time. If I have my phone in my hand, I'm usually looking at like estate sales and stuff like that, or watching skateboarding, you know. Totally. But I'm always hunting through estate sales for cool fishing gear and stuff like that and art. But anytime I look at social media, I always see like a Red Bull contest where they take an airport and turn it into a skate park for one weekend.
Yeah.
It's like, man, you probably spent like $8 million to do that event. And you could have spent $500,000 and built a massive, awesome skate park to host the event in a small town and then left it there.
Well, you're onto something.
Yeah. I mean, I know that it's not as interesting as watching some guys skate through an airport. I know it doesn't have the curb appeal of that, but I sure would love to see it.
Yeah, man.
I would love to see more of that.
Well, Drew.
Yeah.
This is awesome. I'm sorry I rant so
much.
Dude,
this is
a rambler.
This is
this has been super fun, and I could come over and we could just drink whiskey together. But I think
y'all should come visit me sometime.
How far? So is Fayetteville any closer than?
Fayetteville's about an hour and 50 minutes away. But if you guys want to come visit anytime, if you're flying into Fayetteville or Little Rock, I'll come pick you up. You don't even got to worry about a rental. You can stay with me.
Well, and all my buddies are up in Bentonville, so you're kind of like Fayetteville's kind of half between, you know.
Yeah, go see your boys for a few days, and I'll come get you. And you come hang and fish with me for a couple days.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
We've got really cool fishing here near town, and it's not saturated. It's so rad.
Cool.
I lived in Fayetteville for 8 years, and the local white bass fishery, like during the white bass run, will have 50 or 60 cars there on any day during the white bass run. Like people get so hyped on it. And my local smallmouth creek, you know, it's normal to see 5 or 6 vehicles along the creek. And here, I never see anyone.
Wow.
It's cool. I'll go a week without seeing another fisherman at some of my spots, and they're better. Honestly, they're way better.
Well, we're trying to follow these podcasts up with making films.
Yeah.
And John's a really talented filmmaker, so it'd be fun to come out and get tattooed, do some fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do a fishing for tattoos video.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I've got some cool. I've got one. Before we end this, I know y'all probably need to leave. I'll just rant. I'll ramble all night. I've got a really cool one coming out. Do you ever? I imagine y'all listen to punk rock.
Yeah.
You listen to the band the Viagra Boys at all?
Yeah, like a little bit.
Man, I dig them. I think that as far as like the spirit of actual punk rock, I think they're one of the only people keeping it alive.
Yeah,
cool.
it's hard to do.
Their front man, Sebastian, is a very avid fly fisherman. And I saw him in a Swedish fishing film. He's got his forehead tattooed, and I didn't know who they were. I didn't even know his band yet. I was just like watching this film by Rolf Nylander, who's like one of my favorite filmmakers for fishing. And I saw this dude. I was like, who's this guy? I looked him up, and he's like a great tattooer. Heard his band. I was like, these guys are so rad. And we've become buddies now, and he's going to be, I think, my next Fishing for Tattoos video. We filmed it back in May. I'm just really bad at getting around to editing. So.
Yeah.
But so, John, if y'all come out and you're a good filmmaker, you should make the video and edit it.
Get on the Curious Hunt and check those out. And Chuck Ragan from Hot Water Music, another.
Yeah, Chuck's the man.
Yeah. I saw the dandy stuff in the store.
I've never met him, but years ago, maybe like 10 years ago, Danny Reed. It must have been like 8 or 9 years ago. Danny Reed messaged me, and he's like, "Hey, my buddy Paul is in Arkansas. Can you show him some fishing stuff?" And I was like, "Yeah, give him my number." And this guy is Paul Ragan. It's Chuck's older brother.
Yeah.
Reached out to me. He was like working in town with a friend, and I gave him some fishing spots. I was working the day they were there, so I couldn't take him. But they ended up coming to Fayetteville to visit for like a night. I was like, "Come up here and let me take you guys to dinner." And they ended up getting real drunk and sleeping at the house and having like a blast. But he told me a bunch of cool stories, you know, about his brothers and everything growing up. And so I didn't realize until like halfway through the night that it was Chuck Ragan's brother.
Yeah,
cool. Man, I fucking grew up listening to his music.
Chuck's out here now. He's just up 4 hours away.
Yeah, he's a fishing guide up there on the Sac. The American, right? The American.
Yeah, well, I think he does the Delta too. He does a couple different ones, but we've been messaging back and forth trying to get him on the podcast. So hopefully it happens.
I know he's a busy guy and he's a family man.
Yeah. He's on tour. And we're trying to line it up so either John and I can go to a show and record this, or he can stop on his way from LA to San Francisco.
Yeah, very cool, so dude. Fun. He's a good angler too, man. It
very
seems.
Good.
I fished the Feather River up there.
River's awesome.
We were living in the camper, and I reached out to him to see about going and fishing with him because we talked about it a bunch. But he was like building a house and having a new baby.
His little boy, and yeah.
I'll love to see that, man. I would encourage you guys. I know he probably does the same interview a lot, but I would encourage y'all to reach out to David Gravatt if you're talking to skateboarders for sure. And stuff, he's the man for it.
Like I told you, man, the Misfits of the outdoors.
Yeah, we got to get some more. I know it's almost like a sub.
Dude, David broke his toe or had like a surgery on his toe, and they had to put a needle or like a pin through his toe that he had to wear for like 10 months. And like he's had like 15 major surgeries or something because he's just broken his body more than any skateboarder ever. But he took that pin and tied a fly with it and caught a fish on it once it was done. Like he's so rad. Like y'all got to talk to him. I've got a Fishing for Tattoos video with him, and I picked him up at the airport, and he couldn't even stand up straight. He was like, he had four bulging discs.
Jeez.
And when I got him, his eye was like solid black, dude. It's like the worst shiner I've ever seen. Jeez. I was like, what happened? He's like, I punched myself. It's like, dude, it's such a riot.
Checks out.
Yeah, I would encourage y'all to.
I'm going to reach out. I might drop your name if that's cool.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, he's the best, man. So y'all would enjoy him.
So where can people find you on Instagram, and where can they find all the cool shit you sell?
Okay. You can just Google Drooler. It's DREWLR, like Drew LR.
Cool.
And really everything can be found on the internet under that. Luckily, I got to Instagram before Instagram was a popular app, so I got to get a 6-letter name. And I didn't have to do like Drew Wilson _752 or something like that. You know, like, I got to it early enough. Yeah. And yeah, if you Google Drooler, I think I'm the only one, you know, and so I've got YouTube and the Gram, and I don't really do much other than those. I try to keep up with them. But there's all sorts of art on there. You'll find my online store through that. And then, yeah. And if anyone has any questions about fly fishing and skateboarding or wants to visit Arkansas, holler at me. I'll do my best to put you on them. Even if I'm not the one taking you fishing, I can at least point you in the right direction.
Well, I know I'll be reaching out, but dude, thank you. Stay in touch, please. Thanks and again, if you man. Or anybody needs anything out here out in the West, please reach out and
I want to come hang eventually. I'm just quitting traveling for work, but I'm going to start traveling more for fun and fishing. And I would love to come hang.
And if anybody needs anything, use us as a resource for sure.
Cool. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, cool. Happy to help.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
Awesome.
Thank you, dude.
Yeah. Thank you.